right, welcome back. Welcome to the show. The show is Diametric Convergence. We are here for another week. Coming at you a little late. Not going to get into why, but here we are. Don't want to disappoint. We got, as usual, Brandon here with me. I am Andrew. Brandon, who do we got today?
Yeah, welcome everyone. We have Barry Raphael with Lumonics, and we have a great story coming at you in the light of Dorothy Tanner's passing last Thursday, so the end of July, and we all wish our condolences to the whole team, and we're praying for her every day.
There is a lot of study being done on the healing effects of light, color, and sound as a preventative way of dealing with people rather than loading them with chemicals. It's another approach. And there should be a place in Denver where it could be experimented with, tried out, used for people.
Welcome, Barry.
Well, thank you, Brandon and Andrew. It's very good to be here. I think maybe especially because of the passing of Dorothy. Dorothy was the co-founder of Lumonics, along with Mel Tanner, who Mel departed back in 1993. And he was really a major figure, and it was quite a loss. And we've been very fortunate that Dorothy's been part of this journey. And Mark, Barbara, and I look forward to continuing it and just reaching out to the community with the amazing art that they created. And we're looking forward to that.
Amazing.
Right on.
Amazing. Yeah. It's inspired me tremendously. Not only visually stimulating, mentally stimulating, but also just the presence of Dorothy and the love and time she puts into the essence of the being. And I think that's a great lesson for us to take from her is, give it your all and be present. I saw someone post on Facebook about how present she was. I think it was Ava, and so true. Such a beautiful thing. And she has brought presence to my life in big ways. And so have you, Barry, and the whole team. And, I want you to know we're always going to be with you guys. Whatever you need, we're always here. And that goes for everyone.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And, it's interesting. Dorothy was very much she had such a great influence on people, and including not only women, she was a really good role model for women because of her sense of freedom. But that same sense of freedom also had a great influence on the male population, and she just really
that's a great
inspired.
point.
Yeah, she just inspired so many people. And, she used to love to get on the dance floor and just, it was just amazing for people to see somebody, in their 70s, 80s, and then 90s, just continuing to, just shake it up. Yeah, people used to love watching Dorothy dance, and everybody wanted to dance with her. And it was really just a lot of fun at the events. And, eventually it was a little more difficult for her to go to the events, especially as her hearing diminished. And it was very frustrating for her not to be able to really hear people. And especially if we had music going, it made it quite impossible. So, that was one of the reasons Dorothy kind of shied away from going to the events. And, she also wanted to he have the rest of us more involved. And she had a lot of confidence in us that that we could carry on, and that's what we're doing.
And also, at the Scarlet, it was way too cold for her down there. We were doing everything we could to get it warmer for her, and it just wasn't cutting it. And we finally got that fixed.
Yeah, we used to keep the temperature way up. Sometimes when people would come over, they'd be a little like, it's really warm in here, but it was fine for Dorothy. So that's what counted.
Right. Yeah. And that's what we cared about too. And I did get to dance with Dorothy, and I'm so honored to do so. That was an amazing opportunity. And we actually danced by that piece, which I believe is your favorite piece. What's that called again?
Oh, that's called Logo.
Yep, we were dancing right by that. Yep. And it was so cool because after I learned a little bit, a few days ago, I talked to you, and after I learned a little bit more about Logo, it just made me smile that that's right. That's the memory I can remember. One of the most beautiful memories was dancing with Dorothy at the space over there in North Denver.
Yeah, it's Logo is a piece that was originally, when I came around back in 1972, it was its own sculpture, and it was all clear, and it was on a black pedestal. And after Mel died, Dorothy somehow was taken to that piece, and we had it in storage, and she put color in it. She added to it. And when Mel was alive, there weren't LEDs that were available to us, so it was mainly incandescent and fluorescent light. And when LEDs came around after Mel died, it was really she did a black base with LED lights. Yeah, so she added to the piece with transparent fluorescent color that was also kind of a new phenomenon. And then she put it inside of a case, a smoked plexiglass case. And the result was you would get these reflections throughout this cube. So it's a 5-sided cube on top of the sculpture. And so it is one of the few pieces that Mel started and Dorothy completed. In the early years, they worked more cooperatively. They worked on pieces together. And then as time went on, they would always consult each other. But, they really kind of had their own pieces that they did.
Yeah, that's, I love both styles, and coming together, it's so cool. And it's just, it's a different thing, especially when you're thinking about over 50 years ago. There was nothing like this. And
on Facebook the other day, I posted some photos of the early pieces, cubes and pedestals, before there was a multimedia space. And then actually just a couple of years later, they started the Lumonics Light and Sound Theater in Miami. And it's such an amazing transformation from individual pedestals and cubes to this powerhouse multimedia theater where they control the pieces from a keyboard.
Try not to call it too much of anything. It's like, here it is. And but if you have to and really go further into it, certainly it's an art form.
Yes,
I don't know what else to describe that. And I'm not ashamed that it's an art form. It's just that a lot of people, when they hear art,
go in the other
direction. You think of musty museums and so on. It's like, it doesn't seem like it's much fun. And that's kind of, sad. The art is fun. That's what art is about. We're just showing another form of it. Hey, really it's okay to smile and feel real good. And art is doing it to you.
Well, it actually was a keyboard, more like a piano keyboard. And it was certainly before we knew of computers. So everything was very analog. The sound was analog. We used records and and so it was very low tech in retrospect, but at the time it felt like it was really it felt state of the art to us. We had quadraphonic sound, and and we started to use lasers in the early days. So it was really a very cool thing, especially the nights of the performances when Mel and Dorothy, they had Lumonics was located in a warehouse, and all the walls were black, and the pieces were all around you, including some hanging pieces from the ceiling that they would put spotlights on, and some of them would turn as mobiles and change in color. So they could actually control the pieces to synchronize with the music. And they could either do it manually or it would just happen electronically. I'll use that word. And then they would do live projection from a booth on the second floor. And those experiences were so awesome. They were really life-changing for people. Yeah. We would meet people years later and they would say, that experience really got me into, doing something that I had dreamed of doing, but I never, had the will or the confidence to do it. And somehow they got inspired enough. And, when you hear that kind of thing, you really know you're involved with something that is, that really has value for people. And I think that's kind of what has been the kind of glue that has kept us all together. We felt like we were on, some kind of mission.
Oh yeah. And like souls come together, and it was so great to meet you guys during the Scarlet days and see how you work and just how organized you are. And it made me grow, and I feel it made our whole team grow within the Scarlet. And we definitely appreciate everything that you guys showed us and given us through the whole thing. And that was a great team project all around, with the kitchen, with Gabe in the kitchen and you guys in the basement, and us running the main 2 floors with healing and music and art. It was just a dream come true. And I think really the way that happened was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and we hit it. We did our absolute best every time, and I think that's what really counted, and that's why people were calling it one of the best new indoor venues in Colorado. Until politics got involved, but things are turning around, and I see a bright future for whatever's next there.
Yeah, well, we've been contemplating what is really kind of the best thing that we could be doing now that Dorothy has departed. And we're kind of, I think one wonderful thing could be to have a good sized public space where we can take everything out of storage and put all the work in this space and have it be used for meetings, performances, yoga, museum, school.
Yeah.
And I think that would be really, I think the most enjoyable, best thing to be doing. And I'm at that point where I don't feel like I'm really that thrilled about doing something less and postponing that vision. I think there's really, this is a good time to really follow through on that idea. How we get from one place to another, is the adventure. But I think it could be done. We've got all the artwork, and we've got all the people to help make it happen.
Yes.
There'll be some finances to work out to make that happen, but that shouldn't hold us back.
It always comes, right? And the dream is the most important thing, and I really do love that. Hopefully that could be the McShane down the road. It's so big and full of. It will be full of life someday, but if not, hopefully there's a space waiting just for every Lumonic piece, and it can be a museum.
Yeah,
because that's what it really needs to be. I mean, these pieces need to be preserved. If you guys have never seen these in person, I strongly encourage you to do so, because the angles and the perspectives you look at them, they could be a new piece every time, depending on how you look at it. And I think that's what they were really trying to get across, is that there's no limits to what you can do in the art world.
Yeah, Mel once said in an interview that how the pieces reflect off of each other, and that after a while you don't know if you're looking at the piece or the reflection.
And yes, I love that. That's so true. And especially in the space that you guys create. And they're not just one piece on the wall. A lot of the times you guys are creating a whole atmosphere, and that's what I think is really beautiful about the whole thing.
Yes.
Like when you came into the Scarlet, you're like, okay, how do we block out these windows?
That's why we would really like to darken the windows and, just keep it as a total art installation, so that people could really be free to have their minds wander with very few distractions.
And then we're like, what are you talking about? What the heck? And you guys knew exactly what you had in mind, and we got it done, and we believed you, and it all worked out. It's cool to see a vision come to life, especially a strong vision that has a lot of experience behind it.
Yeah, well, that was our first, what we called Lumonics Mind Spa at the Scarlet. And we ended up doing another Lumonics Mind Spa at the McNichols building. And that was a very successful exhibit. And we had events there. It was used as a gallery and meditation space. And we had musical events. We had workshops. It was really, it was a terrific idea. And now we actually have our third Lumonics Mind Spa that's very close to where Lumonics is, at the in the city of Thornton. And the ironic thing is, it's located on Dorothy Boulevard.
That's
I love that.
It really is. And it's called the Oz Gallery at the Thornton Arts and Culture Center. So, I told Dorothy, hey, it's called the Oz Gallery on Dorothy Boulevard. So you must be the wizard. You must be the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, I love that. That is awesome.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Dorothy
that is awesome.
never got to see it. She never got to see it, but somehow,
she's looking at it right now.
Well, yeah. Well, we talked to her about what pieces we were going to bring, and ultimately said, "Hey, you guys know what to do." And it is something that we would like to have available in other places. until we actually have our museum, or even while we have it, to have kind of like satellite exhibits to keep it out in the different communities around Colorado, around everywhere. So we have some really nice plans, and it's just a matter of doing it, putting it into action.
I really do like the, as you call them, satellite exhibits. I think it gets it out there to the world. I really loved the exhibit you had at the Inglewood Museum.
Oh, the retrospective. That was wonderful. The people at the Museum of Outdoor Arts have been really champions of the work.
And yeah, Barry, so how did you get involved with Lumonics? How did that all start?
Well, I actually had a friend of the family had told me about it. To make this story, to fill it out a little bit, I had been teaching school in Chicago, and in the summer of 1970, for the summer, I took a road trip to California, and traveling up the coast, I landed in Oregon, and there were these people that were living in a state forest, and I guess what you would call a bunch of hippies. And it was really, for a guy like myself living in Chicago, it was like quite a thing to be so free outdoors, and people built fires, and there was a swimming hole, and I enjoyed it so much that I decided not to go back to teaching. I was about 22. I thought I would retire. And but what happened after a while is that I really it really wasn't coming together for me in the way I would have liked to, and I think I got a little scared too. So I went back to Chicago and moved in with some friends into an apartment, and what we would call in those days a hippie pad, and I started teaching school again. And my mother was a travel agent, and one of her clients was a friend of the family, and he was a teacher at the University of, it was Broward County Community College. And it was at a time in the late 60s and early 70s that schools were getting much freer. They started a project called University Without Walls, and it was just a much freer atmosphere for students. And my friend Jerry, who was one of the instructors, he was involved with that. And so he would travel between Chicago and South Florida. And some of the other professors told him about this theater in Miami. They said, you got to check this place out. And it was Lumonics, and he was taken with it greatly. And he said he got to meet Mel and Dorothy and said, would you like to bring this to Chicago? And Mel and Dorothy said, well, we'd be interested in exploring that idea. So he flew them up to Chicago, and that's where I met them. So it's interesting that my mother told this Jerry that, she would really like him to speak with me because, maybe he could straighten me out a little bit. Yeah.
Little
did she know that he used to take LSD all the time. Oh. And he was a real space cadet, but she knew nothing about that. So I was very happy to make the introduction. And we hit it off, and he introduced me to Mel and Dorothy in Chicago. And, I just thought they were the coolest people. And then what happened is they were thinking about moving this to Chicago. And I was I had Christmas break coming up, and um, they said, why don't you come down and check out the theater? And as soon as I walked into that space, it just transformed me. Um, I was kind of looking for a breakthrough in my life. I was also looking for a breakthrough in my students' lives, and I felt this would be the ultimate field trip where you could come into a space that feels so creative and so alive and so imaginative that it could alter your consciousness, and it did mine. And so I really wanted to start a field trip program, bringing Lumonics to Chicago. I was so excited about that, but we couldn't find a place. We really couldn't find the right place. So Mel and Dorothy said, if you feel like you're coming down to Florida, we'd love to have you join us. And that's what I did. So,
Wow.
So it was really just, it was really very transformative. I mean, it just totally changed my life.
Yeah, I bet. And, just meeting you guys has changed my life. So I can only imagine in the prime and seeing it move and shake and everything, all the wheels turning, just an incredible, and, the minds of them too, I know were very powerful. I never met Mel, but I can only imagine.
Yeah, well, they were really looking for another kind of life experience. Mel was in World War II, and he was all of 17 or 18 years old, and went to Europe. And there was this photograph of Mel with a few of the other guys in the platoon. And this photograph is so remarkable because these are like men, like grown men. And you see Mel, he looked younger than 17. I mean, he looked like a kid, and here he was on the front lines in Europe. There's another picture of him where he was actually on and this big field, and it looked like you were there was nothing around. It looked like you were looking at some kind of science fiction movie. There was just this man in an army uniform, with a rifle in just kind of a blank area with no buildings, nothing. It was just a remarkable picture. And when he came back from the war, he decided to enroll in art school, and which of course his father had a fit about, because you're supposed to get yourself like a job. But Mel was really determined to live a different kind of life, and how he met Dorothy is that Dorothy took some classes. This was at the Brooklyn Museum School of Art. Mel was one of the first classes under the GI Bill that was started after World War II.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so Dorothy was enrolled in some sculpture classes, and working. She had a day job, and she was taking the classes on the side. And one of the students said, "Hey, I'd like to take you over to this guy I know. He has a studio apartment in the basement of this building." And Mel was sharing it with another person. So Dorothy went to Mel's place on a date, and they really hit it off. And a couple of years later, they got married.
Wow. And so, what was Dorothy doing before, even before that college? Do you know much about her upbringing, any of that?
Well, Dorothy grew up, and Mel, they grew up during the Depression. Dorothy was a couple of years older than Mel. Dorothy was born in 1923, and Mel in 1925. So they grew up. I know Dorothy's family was really quite poor, and Mel's father had a business, but Dorothy's family was really quite poor, and
Wow.
So and she kind of left home at the age of 16. She just wanted
And
to be very independent. So she had
and
different
were her
jobs. She worked for
were they
a
supportive of her being independent?
well, it made her father related a little more to Dorothy than her mother. Her mother wanted Dorothy to have more of a traditional life, and you become a stenographer, or you become a nurse, or
Mm.
something like that. You get a
Mhm.
trade, and
Mhm.
Dorothy was just kind of resistant to it. But she actually had different kinds of jobs. She worked for a photography studio that were this woman had a business, and they were photographing a lot of the Ivy League uh, women. Uh,
Hmm.
they would take portraits of them, and that's where Dorothy kind of started to learn photography. Uh,
Wow.
and then she actually had her uncle. He had a really nice kind of, at the time it was like a chain of vacuum cleaner stores, and
Hmm.
it was right after the war, and people were starting to buy houses, and people were going to buy their first vacuum cleaner, and so it was actually a very good business. And Dorothy was would manage the store, and also trained the salesmen. These men would
Wow.
go on the road for days at a time, and they had this kind of technique developed, and they used to sell a lot of vacuum cleaners. And Dorothy worked in at maybe five or six of the offices, and she was single at the time, so she would just get an apartment somewhere and kind of manage these different stores. So she was really very good. I mean, she was doing things that you didn't see too many women doing at the time. It was mostly like a man's world. So she was
Yeah.
real gutsy.
Yeah.
Yeah, she had a
Well,
lot of
that's what
confidence. But I think she once said she had more confidence than brains. But I didn't believe that for a second.
right. I definitely saw the confidence and I loved it. Uh, she's challenged me, and I think she's challenged many. That's what she's really great at,
Yeah.
uh, in my opinion.
Hmm.
And I love it when people challenge me in those ways and make me think, and it helps me grow. And right then I might be like, oh, like, why are they asking me this? Or it might be like exactly what I needed, but either way it helps me grow.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I'm really thankful for that. And my grandfather was a lot that way as well. He was always challenging me and making me think for myself. And I think that needs to be passed down much more in this world.
Hmm. So what happened is when Dorothy and Mel got married in 1951, um, they had an opportunity. Dorothy's uncle said, "I have a store in Syracuse. I'd like you to kind of run that." And so Mel and Dorothy moved to Syracuse, and they kind of ran the store during the day, and then the rest of the time they did their artwork. And they had a house, and they had a kind of a coach house in the back that Dorothy turned into a sculpture studio. Dorothy would get into doing welding. I mean, she was into doing polyester. She was into using a lot of different materials. non-traditional materials, and also metal as well. And Mel was much simpler. He was a painter, but he would do these really large canvases. And they also started the Syracuse Art Workshop, where Dorothy taught sculpture and Mel taught painting. And Dorothy did a lot. Dorothy used to love to work with wood and do these carvings of people's faces. Dorothy did an amazing one of Mel that we still have. And Dorothy did a porcelain one of Mel's sister, Jocelyn.
Wow.
Really amazing. Beautiful pieces.
She's had many hats, huh?
That's for sure. You know, she was actually in her early 40s when she started to work with plexiglass and light. You know, what happened is, you know, after they were in Syracuse for a bunch of years, they were getting a little kind of, you know, this is getting a little too normal.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided to go back into the art world in New York. And they set up a cooperative gallery called Granite Gallery. And what was unique about the gallery is that they carried artists' work that were in different parts of the country that really didn't have access to a New York gallery, which was really important for artists, because if you could show that your work is in New York City, that meant a lot to your career and your portfolio. Mm-hmm. So they were bringing in artists. You know, people would submit work, and if they really liked the work, they would carry it, and the artist would have an occasional one-person show, and it was really quite successful. And on the side, Dorothy started making phone calls to corporations to see if they would have interest in having a art piece that incorporated the different products that they would make. So Dorothy approached General Electric, who had just come out with the pacemaker, and they created this unique sculpture that had the pacemaker in it. And that was their first experience with plexiglass. It wasn't lighted, but it was the first time that they were introduced to that material. And they really liked it. And after they did a group of them, you know, it was like time again to like, you know, Mel, I'll preface this with, you know, Mel said that they befriended a couple, and a man and a woman, and they were both artists. And they liked these people very much, but somehow they felt like they didn't want to really become these people. And if they kept on a certain course that they were on, that was what their future looked like. And they decided to kind of rearrange the future. So they gave up the gallery, gave up their loft where they had their studios in New York, and they had a T-Bird, I think a 56 or 57 T-Bird that they sold, and they moved. They just took a freighter to Holland, and they bought a Volkswagen Bug, and they traveled throughout Europe. And they just had quite a time. You know, they had sketchbooks and things like that, and Mel created a lot of different collages, and Dorothy discovered yoga. But importantly, they also discovered some of the first hippies that they ever encountered that were traveling in Europe. And it's like, wow, you know, these are people half their age, but you know, it's like they're very cool people. They never encountered people like that. I mean, they were familiar with the beats, people like Allen Ginsberg. And this was sort of, right after the Beats were the start of the hippies. And they related better to them than people their own age. And after traveling in Europe, they decided they were going to come back to the States and go to San Francisco, which was really what was happening. Summer of Love. I mean, that was the place. And they stopped off to see Dorothy's parents in Miami Beach. They hadn't seen them for quite a long time. And somehow they were said to themselves, we've been on the road for a long time. Maybe we ought to just kind of hold off and just find a spot in South Florida and get a studio, which is what they did. And then what happened is they picked up on that material plexiglass that they had started to work with before they left for Europe, and began lighting it, and which was a really quite a novel expression. So you had these lighted cubes, and then they did columns, and those were the first geometric shapes that they got into. Who knew at the time that eventually that would become the building block of the art form, which eventually, a few years later, became the Lumonics Light and Sound Theater. It's interesting that we started the school, the Lumonics School of Light Art. We started that after Dorothy won the Denver Mayor's Award for Innovation. And we started a school, and what we teach people how to do is make a cube. And that's how this whole thing got started. So, Mark's the instructor, and we've had a lot of students, and each one, they make a white cube, and then they artify it, they decorate it. And it's amazing the variation, how everybody has their own idea. And these are really, it's quite a thing. We have on our website, lumonics.net/cubes, CUBES, and you'd have a chance to see what a lot of the students have made as a class.
And Barry, do you guys ship those by any chance?
Well, I mean, we don't make them commercially. I mean, basically what we do is we teach people how to make it, and then they have it for the rest of their lives. They have their own. But I guess if somebody wanted a blank cube, I mean, they look really nice, just a lighted cube, because we make them now with LED bulbs, and you could have it. It comes with a remote control, so that you can change the color. You could have it cycle through the colors, and it's
nice.
It's really so. Just changing the color kind of changes the mood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Well, I was asking if you ship them because I think everyone in the world needs a cube.
Oh boy, you want us to be really busy, don't you?
I do.
Okay.
I've built drawer boxes before. I know squares are not the easiest thing to build if you want it perfectly square, but I'm up for the challenge.
Great. Well, maybe you'll take the.
I'm curious.
Maybe take the class.
Oh, I most definitely. And I'm curious, how did Lumonics get the name Lumonics? Where did that come from?
The name Lumonics, that actually came from a person that came to the events. The original name was After Image, and After Image is when you. I'll give you an example. When you look at the sun, and then you close your eyes are closed, but you're getting an image of the light. And that's what they originally called the theater, is After Image. And somebody came to the show, and and did a review of it, and he said he's calling it Lumonics. So that's how we got the name. Lumonics is sort of kind of an acronym for illumination, harmonics.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So it's a cross between illumination and harmonics.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. I love it. I think that was brilliant.
That's really awesome.
It stuck, obviously.
It's interesting that there was a company in Canada called Lumonics Laser. They were like a really large company at the time. They were involved in a lot of different things, and they heard about us, and they didn't like that we were using that name, and they wrote us this kind of letter, and it turns out that we had the name before them.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so that's what happened. And after that, they really kind of stopped messing with us. I mean, we also told them that we were, Lumonics Light and Sound Theater. So
right,
we weren't in competition with them.
Right.
After Image,
that's the same thing.
Is After Image is that based on Mel's vision with the plane?
Oh, not exactly. Okay.
No.
So, right. So Mel had this mystical, it turns out to be a kind of a mystical experience. They were taking their cubes and pedestals, and they put them in a Highline stereo store in Miami on a very busy street called Biscayne Boulevard. It's a very kind of a well-known street. And this was in the era of later in the 60s when people began experimenting with, actually stereo came out. So prior to that, people were listening to mono records. So stereo was really quite a breakthrough. And there was this kind of Highline audiophile store. And they asked Mel and Dorothy if they could kind of create kind of an installation. And it was called like a new experience in music, a new experience in art, and a new experience in design. And it was a very successful installation. And what happened is one day, Mel and Dorothy were just on their way to this little diner that was just down the street. And Mel was walking across a parking lot, and he heard an airplane, and he looked up, and it was a very sunny day, and it was a metallic airplane. And when he brought his eyes down to the ground, he saw himself at the other side of the parking lot looking back at him. And it caused this change in consciousness. I mean, it really shook him up. He had a little trouble recognizing who Dorothy was for a little bit until they kind of gathered themselves in the restaurant. But Mel was very transformed. He went from this very quiet person to introspective person to being much more outgoing. He would be able to get into the car and just go places that he really normally would have needed a map to get to pre-GPS. And so Dorothy was looking for a breakthrough at the time, and she really wanted something more than just making the cubes and pedestals for a living. And and being like business people, which is what you have to do to be somewhat successful. It's not just enough to do your artwork, but you have to be able to sell it and so on. And Mel had kind of told her to kind of just hang in there, hang on, and something will come up. And Mel had that experience, and that just changed the whole direction. They went from creating these cubes and pedestals into creating this whole multimedia experience. Yeah. And just the right people would come along. Some people came along that were familiar with doing some of the light shows in the early days of the psychedelic era. And they had projectors that they weren't using, and all kinds of different supplies that Mel and Dorothy could utilize. And another guy was like that they met at the stereo store. That was he introduced them to color organs, which is like an early, more primitive device, but at the time was state of the art. And you could connect the pieces into a device, and you could have the pieces do different kinds of patterns. So it all worked out well, especially these slides that Mel and Dorothy did. They took these 2-inch hand-painted slides, and then they would project that on a wall so that these little slides would be 15 by 20 feet, just enveloping people that were in the audience. So a combination of the live painting, the slides, strobes, it was such a powerful experience that after a couple of hours, when it ended, nobody wanted to get up. They were just laid out. And,
was this the same time as like the liquid laser light shows that like the Grateful Dead people put on? Because I've seen those before. Was it like that in a way, or totally different? Where they use oils and a projector.
Uh-oh.
Hello?
Are we back?
We're back.
Oh,
okay.
Great.
There he is.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I was just asking, is it similar to the liquid laser light shows that like you would see at a Grateful Dead show back in the day?
Yes.
Or is it different?
Well, it wasn't completely different, but what happened is rather than being in a in a huge concert hall, you were in a more of an installation, so that you were surrounded with these light sculptures, and that were doing different kinds of their own kind of dance, and the music was much more intimate, so that it was just more of a total experience. And there were other techniques besides just the liquid aspect. As I mentioned, those slides were really really amazing. We digitized them. Mark digitized the slides last year or a couple of years ago.
Wow. That I'd love to see those.
Yeah. Maybe I could send a couple, and you could put that, we could attach that as part of this recording.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, and so you, Mark and Barb, you kind of, all work together to still do this, and I see you at every event, just connecting with people and writing in your notebook, and I'm super, it's such a cool thing to see how present you are as well.
Oh, thank you, Brandon. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah, and then how did Mark get involved in the whole thing? How did he learn how to start building these?
That's a very good question. So Mark was kind of what he referred to as a rough carpenter. he was working on homes, building new homes in a kind of an upscale neighborhood called Coral Gables near the University of Miami. And he was working construction, and which was no easy thing because the Miami weather was like, it could hit 100 pretty easily. You get really dehydrated. But Mark was also looking for a kind of a breakthrough. And I think you really have to be looking for a kind of a breakthrough to hang out with the Tanners, because they made it all possible. And Mel's sister Jocelyn lived in a building where Mark was kind of like a maintenance person for a while, and they got to meet each other, and Jocelyn told them about this place, and Mark. I came around. We all came the same year. I came around I moved to Miami in March of 1972, and Mark and Barbara knocked on the door one Friday night in September of 1972, and was also totally enveloped by the experience. So he had never worked with plexiglass before. So this is one of my favorite stories is Dorothy and Mel, when they were doing the cubes and other geometric shapes, they would have to buy the plexiglass, but the factory also had would do fabrication. So they got to meet this guy named Pete Adams, who did the cutting, and they really hit it off. And Pete knew just what the kind of thing that they wanted, and Pete was really fascinated with the work that Dorothy and Mel were doing. So Pete said, I really, I really can't stand being with my wife every night. I got to get out of the house sometimes. So do you mind if I kind of work some evenings, just volunteer my services at the studio? And that's how they met. That's what happened. So Pete was the person that Mel and Dorothy would have working on the sculptures, and Mark had expressed a lot of interest. So Pete took him under his wing, and it didn't take too long for Pete to say to Mel, "This guy's ready. He could do it." And so that's how Mark got involved. Pete once brought over this plexiglass. It was clear plexiglass, a violin that he made that was just the most beautiful thing I ever saw. Electricians. This was really, there were very few electronic musicians, playing electric violin at the time. There were some, and they would have loved to have had that instrument.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's
and Mark
amazing.
really he was able to work with Mel and Dorothy. At the time, the project was working on the theater, and how Mel designed a lot of these pieces was, like he has this spot in the corner that he really needed something that would work in that space. So these were a little unusual for artwork to be done at the time, very site specific. I mean, he made these pieces for for particular parts of the theater. Although over the years we did a lot of commercial work too. We do certain kinds of nightclubs and discotheques. Some really amazing installations that were done.
I've heard of discotheques before. What are those?
Discotheque would be kind of a place where people would come to dance. It was a French word.
Cool.
Yeah. So those were the places where people would come and dance, mostly with DJs rather than live performers. That's how it differed from a lot of the nightclubs.
That's and you guys just all stayed together and kind of kept it going and kept the dream alive.
Yeah, at the
Throughout it.
time we had our, we had different apartments. Mark and Barbara had a place, and I had an apartment, and Mel and Dorothy did as well. And we had a couple of other people that were part of our journey, Mel's sister and her friend Louise. And we had an opportunity to move to California. So a friend of ours had access to a house, and he wanted to do this kind of an interesting project where it would be like we would get like a grants from the government to do ecology tapes and to have kind of systems like gray water and certain plants that did not require much water. And and then he had another place that was a little more rural where they were getting into solar energy. So it was kind of an early project that we picked up on. And so we were in California from 1979 to 1981, but the person who owned the house decided to sell it. So we were kind of at this point of what do we do? And one of the people on our journey had inherited a house in Maine, in Bangor, Maine. And we had an opportunity to go to Maine. And so we went from Miami to California to Maine. And we took over a bank building in that right in the heart of downtown in Bangor, Maine. And what happened is that they opened up a mall a couple of years earlier. That's when the suburban life started coming in a little more active. And when they built this mall, all the stores in downtown either moved there or closed up. So the downtown was practically like a ghost town. But we had a chance to rent this bank. It was a 4-story building. And we put in our Lumonics Light and Sound Performing Gallery there. And we had one floor for studios. And it was really quite a fascinating installation. However, what happened is when winter came around, the rent was very low, but we had to pay for heating. And the heating bill was just like unbelievably high. And we just couldn't afford it anymore. And also, it wasn't as active as a place that we would hope that we were sort of led to believe. And so we moved to Boston and Cambridge, and we did commercial work there. And
wow,
yeah, then we were itching to get into doing the theater again, and we couldn't quite. There was a building that we were really interested in, but it was just a little. It was more of like a city type building. It was a little too complicated for us at the time, and so we ended up moving to Florida again, but this time to Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, so it's been quite a journey, and we were in South Florida for a lot of years. We got down there about 1987, 1986, and then Mel passed in 93. And about 11 years ago, we moved to the Denver area.
I can't wait to see what's next for this this whole thing, and what I can't wait to see the Thornton exhibit. I was just talking to my homie about that, and we're definitely going to come check that out.
Yeah, they
And I
might be
strongly
changing the hours
encourage.
a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, they're talking about it. Maybe have it open a little more on the weekends. So
Okay.
yeah, but if people go to lumonics.net, they could just click on some of the installations, and we have information on the homepage about it. And people could check out the
Absolutely.
Lumonics Mind Spa Thornton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'll definitely share that on the description,
Yep.
as well as a few inspiring videos and art pieces, so you can kind of see them as a
great.
video form. But I strongly encourage people check it out for themselves. And we want to leave people with a song that Dorothy and Mark did together.
Oh, that's wonderful.
A few years back. And what was that song called, Barry?
Exalte.
Exalte.
Yes.
And
if I believe the video you're going to show was presented on public TV, produced in South Florida. And it's one of the few videos we still have of Mel talking and Dorothy being interviewed, and it really shows the theater and some of our video. It's really I've seen it countless times, and I still enjoy watching it. And you can hear Mel and Dorothy, talking about the art form.
Absolutely. And I think we'll probably take a few pieces here and there from a couple of those videos and bring you as much as we can from them too, and how inspiring it is. And we'll go into the beautiful song they created. I think Dorothy has an amazing message. And one thing I wanted to, she's all about the healing, and she always wanted to push that, right, Barry? She wanted the next level. And she explains that, and she was the epitome. She did what she wanted, and she lived a purposeful life. I believe she was always looking forward to the next thing and what we can do to help people.
True.
I've even sat in a meeting around the table with her, and she'll bring it out of you. So
that's true. Well, thank you, Andrew and Brandon. This has been a wonderful opportunity to talk about Lumonics, my favorite thing, and to talk about some of my favorite people, and to be just being able to share it with your audience.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you coming, joining us, and just sharing all this history and just these stories. It's been fantastic to listen to.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And don't forget to check them out at lumonics.net. You can find us on all the searches you can find us. And next week we'll have debutantes, or in a few days. And they are a band, a bluegrass band, and super excited to bring them to the world. And
now,
thank you so much, Barry.
Brandon, how will people get to listen to this podcast?
Oh, they can listen to it on all podcast platforms.
All streaming services. Yep.
Yeah.
Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify is a big one. And then through Anchor, we put our posts on Facebook. And if you're following us on any of those platforms, they'll get updated once we post new episodes.
And soon to be YouTube, and it will be fun to kind of put those video clips. We'll have to take pieces, but it'll be really fun to kind of put those together, as well as show some still photographs of the art. So
Mark has put together some really nice footage that I think would work beautifully for the visual translation.
I love that.
Heck yeah!
Oh, that's exciting! I'm so happy you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we're just working on getting the right video program, and we'll bring that to the world just the same.
Sounds wonderful. Okay, well, have a wonderful evening, fellows. And thanks again.
Too young, too old, too hot, too cold. What are you complaining for? Too fat, too lean, too sweet, too mean. Come on now. We're going into tomorrow, and just where are you coming from? Looking to survive, becoming more alive, starting to revive in a new way, start to face the facts. Come on, let's make tracks. Because without love, we're going nowhere. Forget the tears, confront the fears. The same complaint for too many years. You're up, you're down. You smile, you frown. We're gliding through the shadows with love gliding away. Same day, the world was begun. We need to stop all of our hiding. Need to clear our own way. True worth. It's been here from birth. It's been here for us from the first day. Now there's nothing more real than what you feel. Don't try to talk it away. Then feel your dimensionalities pass by your personalities and clear the way. Leave your goods behind. Keep yourself in mind. Build a brand new world in your own way. Hear this loud and clear. Bring love here. It will all appear in a new way. Flow going into tomorrow. Flowing into tomorrow. And now knowing where we are from, face the facts and start to make tracks, because without love we're going nowhere. Leave your goods behind. Keep yourself in mind. In a new way. Forget the tears. Confront the fears. Same complaint to many years. We're going into tomorrow. Just where are you coming from? Sprinkling gold onto the sky.